Beneath Sydney's southern suburbs, there is a $3.1 billion 4-kilometre tunnel 245 metres away from being done. It's structurally sound for most of its length. The fit-out is well advanced, the lining is poured. By every conventional measure, it is essentially a finished road. But for nearly 2 years it has sat dark, sealed off and silent. While above it, a legal war burns through taxpayer money and the people it was built to serve sit in traffic on the Princes Highway. What is inside that tunnel that nobody can fix? To understand what was at stake when that ground gave way, you have to go back, way back. Sydney's southern suburbs have needed a proper motorway connection to the city's road network for decades. The corridor for it was officially gazetted and reserved as part of the Cumberland County Plan, the post-war blueprint for Greater Sydney's future. That plan was adopted in 1951. For the next 7 decades, the project floated in and out of political relevance. It got names: the F6 extension, the South Connects, eventually the M6. It collected plans, proposals, feasibility studies, and promises in equal measure. Every decade brought a new announcement and a new delay. The Princes Highway through the southern suburbs was carrying tens of thousands of vehicles a day, including heavy freight trucks, because there was simply nowhere else for them to go. Finally, in October 2017, the New South Wales government committed to Stage 1 of the project. Planning approval came through in December 2019, and in May 2021, a $2.5 billion design and construction contract was awarded to CGU, a joint venture between CBP contractors, Geller, and UGL. Main construction began in January 2022. Sydney had been waiting for this since before most of the people building the tunnel were born. After 73 years, they were finally months from the finish line. The scope of M6 Stage 1 was specific and significant. Twin tunnels running beneath Sydney's southern suburbs from the M8 motorway at Arncliffe down to President Avenue at Kogarah. The promise to commuters and residents was concrete. More than 2,000 heavy trucks removed from local surface roads every single day. 23 sets of traffic lights bypassed on the Princes Highway between St. Peter's and Kogarah. For residents above the tunnels, it meant quieter streets and cleaner air, and for the state, it closed a gap in the motorway network that had been sitting open for generations. For most of its length, the M6 behaved exactly as the engineers expected. The heading and bench method worked like this. Road header machines cut the upper portion of the tunnel profile first, the heading, advancing a few meters at a time through the Hawkesbury sandstone. Once the heading was secured and lined, crews returned to excavate the lower bench. Then the process repeated, methodical, controlled, predictable. And 4 kilometres it was. The sandstone in the northern and central sections of the alignment was consistent, manageable rock. The twin bores pushed south through Arncliffe and Walleye Creek. Concrete lining went in behind the face. By late 2023, construction had passed the 80% mark. The surface road upgrades along President Avenue were advancing. The project was tracking. Then the machines turned south toward Rockdale, and the geology changed. And here is where the story gets complicated. Sydney's Hawkesbury sandstone is a well-understood material. Engineers have been tunnelling through it for decades, and it tends to behave. But the geology beneath Rockdale specifically is different. In that area, the sandstone gives way to softer sands and clays, ground that demands different, more specialised treatment before you start drilling through it. Standard practice for soft ground tunnelling involves jet grouting, a method that injects high-pressure cement slurry into unstable ground ahead of the excavation phase, solidifying material before it becomes a problem. It's not cheap and it's not fast, but it works. According to reporting by the Sydney Morning Herald, WSP, the primary geotechnical subcontractor on the project, flagged the risks in this specific area. The lead contractor, CBP, reportedly chose a different approach, working with a separate subcontractor, PSM, instead. On top of this soft ground issue, there was something buried beneath Rockdale that nobody had fully mapped. A high-angle reverse fault runs directly beneath this section of alignment, a geological structure that essentially pulverizes rock, turning solid sandstone into a rubber-like mix that is deeply unstable under pressure. CGU later told its own workers this fault type had never before been identified anywhere in the Sydney Basin. At this exact location, the tunnel was only 16 meters below street level at its closest point. Most of the rest of the M6 runs at depths of 60 meters or more. What happens when you drill through rubble with 16 meters of city above your head? March 1st, 2024 answered that question. When the excavation equipment hit the fault zone, the rubble began to destabilize. Water infiltrated from above, and material started migrating upward through the tunnel face into the void forming at the surface. The first sinkhole on March 1st collapsed the ground beneath an industrial building, forcing evacuations and emergency stabilization efforts. Fire and Rescue New South Wales stabilized the site over the following days. Engineers pumped concrete into the void to stop further movement and shore up the building's foundations. The second event, on March 9th, confirmed what engineers feared most. A tunnel project this large, this far along, had a systemic problem with a specific stretch of its alignment, not an isolated one-off incident. SafeWork New South Wales established exclusion zones at both sites. All tunnelling in the affected area stopped immediately. Once engineers could properly assess the scope of the damage, they landed on a number: 245 metres. That was the length of the tunnel section now frozen in place, sitting beneath a geological fault zone with its lining compromised, the surrounding ground unstable, and no path forward that anyone could certify as safe. The tunnel was, remember, 90% complete, and just like that, the end of 2025 completion date was gone overnight. The sinkholes stopped the tunnel. What came next threatened to stop it permanently. The government's position was simple. CGU signed a contract that made them responsible for whatever the ground threw at them. That's what design and construct means. You own the problem. CGU's position was equally simple. Nobody knew that fault was there. Nobody could have known. You cannot hold a contractor responsible for a geological feature that had never been documented anywhere in the Sydney Basin. Both positions have logic. Neither moved the tunnel forward. In May 2025, CGU, the construction consortium, formally walked off the job, announcing plans to demobilise from all sites by the end of June. Premier Chris Minns was blunt: send the lawyers home and bring back the engineers. Nobody listened quickly enough. By mid-2025, the government had spent more than $5.54 million on legal fees. The legal questions remained unanswered. But on West Botany Street, the drilling rigs kept working. The engineering community has been watching this closely, and the path forward, while severe, is clearly solvable. As of early 2026, the work to strengthen the ground beneath West Botany Street is already well underway. Utility relocation began in January 2025, and from March 2025 onward, large piling rigs have been drilling into the ground and inserting reinforced concrete columns along the tunnel alignment using jet grouting and deep soil mixing. The goal is to create stable, strengthened ground around the remaining 245-metre section before excavation restarts. Once ground improvement is finished, crews will access the tunnel through a temporary shaft inside the Bicentennial Park construction shed and excavate the final section. SafeWork New South Wales must certify that conditions are safe before any tunnelling can restart, and that process is ongoing. These techniques are proven on soft ground tunnelling projects across the world. They are slow and they require careful monitoring, but they create a predictable working environment where the fault zone did not. The engineering path forward exists. The bigger question, as it has been since May 2025, is who carries the financial burden of completing it. As of February 2026, M6 Stage 1 has been suspended in the affected section for nearly 2 years. Ground improvement work on West Botany Street is ongoing, with lane restrictions in place through the end of 2026 while the drilling and column work continues. The surface works across the broader project, the road upgrades on President Avenue and surrounding streets, the 5 kilometres of shared pedestrian and cyclist pathways, and the new parks and open spaces were substantially completed by the end of 2025 as planned. The Princes Highway still has the trucks, 2,000 heavy vehicles a day that were supposed to disappear into this tunnel when it opened. It didn't open. They're still there. The tunnel itself is targeting a revised opening of late 2028. Given the complexity of the remaining work and the unresolved questions about who funds the completion, some observers think even that timeline is optimistic. The road corridor beneath Sydney's southern suburbs was first reserved in 1951. The tunnel was supposed to be open in 2025. The 73-year wait just got longer. Cities all over the world are tunneling deeper and faster than ever, driven by population growth, congestion, and the limits of above-ground expansion. Geology does not respect deadlines. When a fault zone that nobody mapped sits beneath the most vulnerable section of a billion-dollar project, somebody ends up paying for it. The only question is who. A geological fault nobody mapped. A contractor who says the contract became impossible. A government that says the risk was already priced in. They know how to fix it. They have the technology. They have the method. But can we trust the 2028 deadline? Or is this tunnel still a decade away? Drop your opinion in the comments. We read every one. Subscribe for more Megabuild stories.